Somewhere in Cleveland is a coach who won Coach of the Year, twice, and still got run out of the building anyway. Somewhere in Pittsburgh is a coach who went 19 straight years without ever posting a losing record, and when he finally left, nobody had to push him out the door. Same league, same insane job description. Two guys with two completely different relationships to a pink slip. Tonight, 5 ranks. Same brutal job almost every single time. Sometimes literally the same coach, twice, which is a sentence that's going to make a lot more sense in about 10 minutes. Bad hire first. Every time. The guy who got the keys and drove the whole operation into a ditch before the paint dried. Then the flip. Good hire. Same pressure, same fan base, ready to storm the practice facility with pitchforks. And somehow it actually worked. Quick question before we start, and actually try to guess it. Don't just scroll past. Which coach on this list holds a record that isn't close to being broken? 19 years in the same building, never won losing season, and then walked away entirely by his own choice, not anybody else's. Keep that name in your head. We're ending on him, and you're going to feel a little dumb for not calling it in the first 10 seconds. Bad coach / good coach. Same job, opposite fates. Let's go. Rank number 5. The bad pick. Josh McDaniels, Denver Broncos, 2009. Denver handed 32-year-old Josh McDaniels the keys in 2009, fresh off 3 Super Bowl runs as Bill Belichick's coordinator, and he basically lit the roster on fire to prove a point. Before that first draft, he traded away Jay Cutler, the actual franchise quarterback, in a power struggle. Then, separately, that same April, spent a first-round pick on Tim Tebow. 2 different power moves, same message either way. The roster wasn't going to be built around anyone McDaniels hadn't personally signed off on. Tebow never started a single game for him. McDaniels was fired in December 2010, months before Tebow ever got the ball. Final tally? 3-9 that year, 11-17 overall in Denver. Here's the actual mechanism behind the collapse, because it's not just bad luck. McDaniels came from a building where the head coach's authority was never questioned, and he tried to run that exact same playbook in a locker room that hadn't earned trust in him yet. Cutler wasn't just a good quarterback. He was the one piece of continuity that roster had. McDaniels traded it for a coin flip on Tebow's arm, and the roster read that decision as exactly what it was. A guy proving a point instead of building a team. Players talk. Once a locker room decides the head coach is coaching for himself, that trust doesn't come back with a good practice or 2. It's gone for the season. This wasn't a guy who ran out of talent. This was a guy who ran out of patience for his own roster before the roster ever got a chance to prove him wrong. 14 years later, the Raiders gave him a second shot. They fired him too. 2 different franchises, 2 different rosters, 1 repeating pattern. That's not bad luck. That's a track record. The good pick. Sean McVay, Los Angeles Rams, 2017. A team's water boy is now the reason he has a Super Bowl ring. Let that sink into how young this guy actually is. 8 years after McDaniels became the league's youngest head coach and imploded with it, the Rams handed the same title, youngest head coach in the modern era NFL, to 30-year-old Sean McVay. Different result completely. He inherited a 4-12 roster and had them in the playoffs by year 1. The difference isn't age. It's what McVay actually did with the authority the second he got it. He didn't blow up the roster to prove he was in charge. He installed a scheme so far ahead of the rest of the league that defensive coordinators spent the next 3 years just trying to catch up to the motion and personnel disguises he was running on early downs. Discipline over ego, in a job that tempts every young coach toward the opposite. Wait, what? McVay's nickname around the building as a kid was literally Waterboy, his own words, because he grew up chasing a coaching career from the bottom of the sport, not the top. He made the Super Bowl in year 2, lost it, then won Super Bowl LFIC in 2022 at 36 years old, making him the youngest head coach to ever win it. Same label, youngest hire in football, given out twice in less than a decade. One guy treated it like a license to blow the whole thing up on day 1. The other treated it like a reason to build something that would still be standing 5 years later. The one thing, being the youngest guy in the room isn't the story. What you do with everyone older than you watching is. Draft grade today. A. Would you hire him again? Yes, and the Rams already re-signed him through the next decade to prove it. 4 hires left. The next bad pick lasted exactly 1 season, and the guy who replaced him inherited the same exact roster. Rank number 4. The bad pick. Jerod Mayo, New England Patriots, 2024. Mayo took over a Patriots team trying to figure out life after Bill Belichick, and lasted exactly one season. He went 4-13, and the losing got so complete that New England's own final regular season win actually cost them the #1 overall pick. They lost by winning, if that tells you anything about how the year went. He was fired January 5th, 2025. 1 year. Done. The problem wasn't that Mayo didn't know football. He was a Pro Bowl linebacker in that same building. The problem was the gap between being a great player and running an entire operation with no head coaching experience at any level. At the exact moment the roster needed the opposite of on-the-job training. This isn't a guy who got years to figure it out. One season, one shot. Gone before the off-season even got started. And the cruelest part is that the same front office that hired him also built the roster that made his successor look like a genius 12 months later. Meaning some of what buried Mayo may never have been about him at all. The good pick. Mike Vrabel, New England Patriots, 2025. Same team. Mayo just lost 13 games there. One coaching change later, it's a completely different franchise. Vrabel walked into the same building 1 week after Mayo walked out of it. Same losing culture everyone had already written off, though not literally the same roster. New England brought in a wave of new faces that offseason, including several rookie starters. He turned it into 14-3, a 10-win improvement in a single offseason, an AFC Championship trip, and a run all the way to Super Bowl LX, where they eventually lost to Seattle. What actually changed wasn't the talent on the roster. It was who those players were being coached by. Vrabel had already run a full rebuild once, in Tennessee, and he brought a completely different discipline into the building. Physical, structured, accountability first. The exact culture a roster that had just gone 4-13 needed, instead of another rookie head coach still learning the job in real time. Wait, what? Vrabel had already been fired once before, by the Titans, when New England hired him. He walked into the least desirable coaching job in football off the back of a firing, and 1 year later he had a second career Coach of the Year award to go with the one he already had from Tennessee. This is the closest comparison on the entire list. Not same era, not same league trend. The literal same franchise, 12 months apart, under two different coaches, with most of the core roster still intact around the new faces. That's about as close to a controlled experiment as this sport ever gets, and the results aren't close. The one thing, give the same roster to two different coaches a year apart, and you don't get two similar seasons. You get a 4-13 team and a Super Bowl run. Draft grade today. A. Would you hire him again? Yes, and Foxborough already knows exactly how close they came to not doing it. 3 hires left. The next bad coach walked away from a college dynasty and lasted 13 games. Rank number 3. The bad pick. Urban Meyer, Jacksonville Jaguars, 2021. Meyer came in with 3 national championships and a reputation as one of the best program builders alive. He didn't make it out of his first season. He was fired after 13 games at 2-11, and the exit wasn't quiet. A bar video that leaked mid-season, plus a sideline incident with his own kicker, Josh Lambo, who alleged Meyer kicked him during a game. Meyer denied it. ESPN's Louis Riddick didn't hedge on air about the overall picture. He called it, in his words, one of the biggest failures of leadership he'd seen in the league. The talent evaluation wasn't the problem here. Building a college dynasty and running an NFL locker room are not remotely the same skill. In college, a coach is the most powerful person in the building by default. Recruits need him more than he needs any single one of them. In the NFL, Meyer was managing grown men on guaranteed contracts who didn't need his approval to keep their jobs, and the culture that worked at Ohio State never translated because the power dynamic underneath it wasn't there anymore. The good pick, Jim Harbaugh, San Francisco 49ers, 2011. Another big-name college coach jumps to the NFL the same era as Meyer. This one almost wins it all, against his own brother. Harbaugh left Stanford for the 49ers in 2011 and inherited a 6-10 roster that hadn't sniffed relevance in years. Year 1, 13-3, and a trip to the NFC Championship game, where they fell to the Giants. Year 2, back further, all the way to Super Bowl Laugh. Harbaugh solved the exact problem that sank Meyer. He didn't try to import a college program wholesale. He imported the parts that actually transfer: physicality, relentless practice standards, an obsession with fundamentals, and then built the rest of his approach around the reality that he was coaching adults who'd already made it. Same big personality as Meyer. Completely different read on the room he was standing in. Wait, what? The coach standing on the other sideline that Super Bowl was John Harbaugh, Jim's older brother, head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. It's still the only Super Bowl in NFL history coached by two siblings against each other, and it happened because both of them had already proven they could take over a broken program and flip it immediately. Same category of hire as Meyer, big-name outsider, huge college resume, unproven at the NFL level. Harbaugh's roster wasn't better than Meyer's. His read on the job was. And he proved it wasn't a one-year fluke either. He took the 49ers back to the playoffs multiple times before eventually returning to college ball on his own terms, at Michigan, where he immediately won a national title. The guy just doesn't seem to know how to walk into a rebuild and lose. The one thing, a college resume gets you the interview. What you do with a locker room full of grown men making more money than you is a completely different test. Draft grade today. Would you hire him again? Yes. San Francisco is still chasing that version of the franchise. 2 left. This next rank only has one coach in it. You'll see what I mean. Rank number 2, the bad pick, Kevin Stefanski, Cleveland Browns, 2026. In January 2026, the Browns fired their head coach after a second straight losing season. 2-time coach of the year, walked out the building anyway. Fan reactions split right down the middle. Some saying the franchise never learns, others saying even 2 trophies has a shelf life in that building. On its own, this reads like every other coaching casualty on this list. Hype, decline, exit. Kevin Stefanski, Cleveland Browns, 2020. Wait, that's the same guy. It is. Same coach, same building, 6 years earlier. Stefanski took over in 2020 and immediately ended an 18-year playoff drought, the longest active drought in the league at the time. He won Coach of the Year that season, largely by building a run-heavy scheme around what his roster actually did well instead of forcing a system his personnel couldn't execute. He won Coach of the Year again later. 2 trophies, 1 franchise, 1 guy. Wait, what? Every other pairing on this list is one man against a different man. This one's different on purpose. Kevin Stefanski is being graded against Kevin Stefanski, the version of him that ended a 2-decade drought and won Coach of the Year for it, against the version of him that got walked out the door 6 years later, after the front office and roster around him had changed plenty in between. Same coaching brain, same franchise. 2 opposite verdicts, and here's my read. Both of them earned. This is the closest thing this format has to an actual controlled experiment on one person. Strip away the different rosters, different eras, different franchises, every other rank on this list has to account for, and you're left with a single, uncomfortable question. How much of good coach versus bad coach was ever really about the coach at all, versus just which 5-year window of his own career you happen to be watching? Think about how differently this rank would read if we'd stopped the tape in 2021. Stefanski's the hero of the whole episode, the guy who ended 2 decades of losing, no asterisk, no twist, just a clean redemption story. Stop the tape in 2026 instead, and he's a cautionary tale about how fast a front office's patience actually runs out. Same man, same resume. The only thing that changed is which year you happen to hit record. The one thing, the coach and the collapse can be the exact same guy. 2 trophies bought him nothing once the record finally caught up. Draft grade today, incomplete. Would you hire him again? Ask this one again in 5 years. He's already answered it 2 different ways once. 1 slot left. This next bad hire quit on his own players with a note left in their lockers. The good hire across from him went 19 years without a single losing season, an NFL record, and then walked away on his own terms. This is the one that's going to blow your mind. Rank number 1, the bad pick, Bobby Petrino, Atlanta Falcons 2007. Atlanta gave Petrino a 5-year, $24 million deal in 2007 to be the guy who fixed the franchise. 13 games in, at 3-10, he quit, not to another NFL job, to the Arkansas job in college football. He didn't call a team meeting. He didn't tell his players face-to-face. He left a note in their lockers and was gone before most of them found out from anyone but the media. There's abandoning a rebuild, and then there's doing it by note. Petrino chose the second one, and it's still one of the most talked about exits in modern NFL coaching history. Arkansas got a coach who'd already shown Atlanta exactly how he handles adversity. He leaves. That pattern eventually followed him out of college football too. The good pick, Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh Steelers, 2007. Same year, Petrino ghosted an entire locker room by paper. A different coach was hired 700 miles away and did not have a single losing season for the next 19 years. Not one. The same year, Petrino was writing exit notes in Atlanta. Pittsburgh hired Mike Tomlin. What happened next doesn't really have a comparison anywhere else in this sport. 19 seasons, and not one of them ended with a losing record. Only one coach in NFL history has ever gone longer without a losing season. Tom Landry, at 21. Tomlin got to 19 faster than anyone who's done it since. Coaches get fired for one bad season. Tomlin never even had one. Here's what actually makes that streak insane once you look at it closely. Tomlin didn't do it with one system or one era of quarterback. He won with Ben Roethlisberger in his prime, then kept winning as that era ended and the roster turned over around him. Most coaches who build a program around one franchise quarterback collapse the moment that quarterback leaves. Tomlin's whole identity was never one player. It was a standard the building held on to no matter who walked through the door, through ownership turnover, coordinator turnover, and an entire division's worth of coaching changes around him. Tomlin just kept showing up in January, year after year, regardless of what was happening 2 buildings over. Wait, what? Tomlin didn't get fired and he didn't get forced out. In January 2026, he stepped down from the job voluntarily, after 19 seasons in the same building, one of the only high-profile head coaches in modern NFL history to leave a franchise entirely by his own choice, with the non-losing streak still intact. Worth saying straight, it wasn't a storybook final year. Pittsburgh had just been blown out in the playoffs and was riding a long postseason losing streak. He walked away anyway, on his terms, not the scoreboard's. Sit with that contrast for a second. Petrino couldn't survive one losing season without abandoning ship through a locker note. Tomlin went 19 years without ever having one, and when he finally walked away, nobody pushed him. He just decided it was time. 19 seasons, 0 losing records, 0 regrets about walking away on his own. Closing line, slower, weightier. A locker note ends a career in one afternoon. Consistency, stacked one ordinary Tuesday practice at a time for 19 straight years, is what actually survives this league. Tomlin's is the best answer this era of coaching ever gave us for what that looks like. The one thing. Petrino ran from one bad season. Tomlin built 2 decades where a bad season never had the chance to show up. Draft grade today, A+. Would you hire him again? Yes. Ask Atlanta how they feel about the note. 5 ranks, 9 coaches, because one rank was never really a versus at all. So argue with me. Which bad hire actually deserved one more season? Which good hire doesn't belong this high? And does a man beating his own past self even count the same way as beating someone else? Put your answer in the comments. I want to see who you're betting on. This isn't the last one of these either. There's an entire second list of pairings we didn't even get to. Franchises that have burned through multiple bad hires before finally getting it right. Tell me down below which team's coaching carousel deserves the next episode, and I'll build the next countdown around whoever gets the most votes.